Yo, what's going on, legends? So, I am finally getting around to making this video about Ronin build advice. I had one made for Samurai about a month or 2 months ago, and that one got some pretty good feedback. And I did mention that I was going to make one for each class, so finally I'm getting around to doing that for Ronin. Um, I think there's some basic stuff that kind of applies to all classes that I covered in that video. So if you haven't seen it, feel free to check it out. And for this one, I'm gonna mainly concentrate on Ronin specific techniques and perks and all that, and sort of which stats go well with the class in general. And at the end, I'm gonna implement something different. I'm gonna actually should have done this for the samurai video, but I think I actually kind of did. But I'm gonna show you guys like a few different builds for different purposes. And yeah, so one more thing that's gonna be different, hopefully from here on out, is I will do a little bit more editing. So, to make the videos a little bit more fun to watch, um, as opposed to me just discussing things. I'll show you what I'm talking about a little bit more. So big thanks to my man Jags for hooking me up with the Final Cut, since that's the main thing that I've been using and trying to learn, and hopefully that'll turn out in better, more fun to watch videos. So anyway, I will do the same thing as I did with the samurai video, which is to start by discussing techniques and going from best to worst. I'm sorry, going from worst to best or whatever. So, for the main class ability, we have three options. The first one you start out with is a spirit animal. This is kind of a good thing if you're a beginner. I mean, also because it's the only thing you have, but it's good because the animal kind of pulls aggro for you and engages enemies. And if you're a new player, you probably finally you probably find it a little bit um, difficult to juggle the enemy load depending on what you're playing. So it's a good starter choice, um, or option, I guess. Then we have Healing Incense, which you unlock that at rank 10. And this is going to be basically Ronin, as you all know, is a support class, meant to be a support class and healing class, which is nice. But I think, it's sort of like an intermediate um, function. Like you can be the thing that I really like about Legends is that each class has strengths that you can play to, but also there's enough flexibility that you can get creative and make really dynamic builds and just use them in creative ways. So this is also a solid choice. If you're playing on a higher difficulty like Plat 7, that becomes again a high difficulty or high level option, because Ronin definitely is needed because of the share wounds modifier. So yeah, so healing incense then becomes more, high level again, but it's all dependent on the content, the type of content you're doing. So what I usually equip for my Ronin build that I have right now is Flaming Roar, which is it's actually really good. Um, with the Iki update and then this new branch to the skill tree that we got on the right, all these options right here are actually pretty good. This one is, I think they're trying to make Ronin be a little bit more offense, so you can play a little bit more aggressively and do have the option to do more DPS, have more DPS. Um, anyway, so Flaming Roar is cool because it actually has a really big AoE. I would say it's larger than a defense area just based on what I've seen. I'll probably make a video to see exactly and to sort of measure it and show it. but it's great because it catches enemies on fire for a few seconds. I think it's total 6 or 8, can't remember. But the cool thing about that is each fire instance is its own source of damage. So you can catch them on fire with this, and then you could maybe do, like if you had the fire ult, that's another instance. And then if you have black powders, that's another instance. So each time you're, setting them on fire, it compounds. So it's a great way to start weakening enemies, especially if you're running Spirit Kunai. Yeah, so that's as far as class ability. Now for techniques, perk 1, it's hard to go with anything but enhanced ghost weapons, which you unlock at rank 2. Um, then we have weakening burst, which is not really that great, especially because it's a ghost weapon that costs resolve. I mean, because it activates like a ghost weapon, so it's R1 and then a button. So it kind of works like a ghost weapon, but then cost resolve. So it seems kind of, especially if you compare it to that, seems like a bad trade-off. Um, it sounds good in principle, but I don't find a lot of applicability, other than just to make fun builds. Um, but yeah, then there's Ronin Unleashed, which again, if you're running Spirit Kunai, which is one of the more viable options for Ronin, you're not really going to need the cooldown for your ability. The legendary slot uh, in perk 1 doesn't seem to be also worth the trade-off. So, especially because of enhanced ghost weapons is basically the backbone of the Ronin. It's like the main, the everything else that you could do with Ronin kind of, because he doesn't have, really doesn't have an ult that does the same kind of damage that the others do. Um, that's why he has this enhanced ghost weapons. So this is kind of his ult, so to speak. And so you're giving up a lot of DPS for another legendary, which it's difficult to find one that would be worthwhile or even compare. Then we have staggering in position, which is actually what I love to run with my Ronin. There's resolve increase. I guess you could, if you're using, Stone Striker, it's a good option. You could do double resolve, and it's great. Um, and then that way you could do a little bit more damage with and using your resolve, because you don't really have an ult that does tons of damage. Quick regen is good for when the weekly modifier is reduce healing. Now, reduce healing means that your healing rate uh, is 50% less, and so this helps offset that. But you have to keep in mind that it's 50% based it's based off of the um, reduced amount, right? So it's not effectively counteracting it completely, but it's rather playing off of that percentage. So it's instead of having 100%, you would have 75% as opposed to 50, which is still good. Cure All is also great for Platinum 7. Um, you know, anytime that the Ronin is healed, his teammates receive 50% as well. Now, the thing that sucks about this is once the Ronin is fully healed, then it doesn't heal anybody else because it has to be an active healing. Now, there's a workaround for this, which is useful for Platinum 7, is that Curl is actually responsive to burst healing, which you could get from Forbidden Medicine. So if you're bombing yourself with Forbidden Medicine, it'll go past the threshold of of your full health bar and keep healing your teammates past that. So it's just a good tip. It's a good thing to know. Soothing Breath, which you unlock at rank 5, is also really good. Especially if you're trying to be more support. If you're trying to play a more classic Ronin build, then Soothing Breath is a really really cool thing, especially if you're helping out people that are not as proficient yet. Fire Breath, you can buff it, but it doesn't do that much damage, and the problem is because it ignites enemies near all players. It kind of spreads out the damage, across everybody that's playing with you. So um, it turns out it translates into being a little damage as opposed to a little damage for each enemy that's around each player, as opposed to a bigger chunk of damage like you would get from all the other ultimates. So it could be a lot of fun to play with, but at the same time, it's kind of a niche. Um, has like its niche uses, so wouldn't completely discard it, but also wouldn't recommend it as a main choice. I would instead of that, I would say this is a good slot for a double legendary. And so if you're going for more DPS, you could do Demon Seeds, for example, and then have two legendaries with it pairs up really well with Spirit Kunai to weaken enemies, and so there's also Staggering Breath, which also weakens enemies. Um, and then it helps, especially for, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're defending a point by yourself, or if you're soloing, it's just really cool to be able to clear that point and give you some breathing room. So, yeah, those are the techniques that you have to work with. Now, if we go to a Ronin charm, you'll find that there's actually, because it's a defense charm, I don't really, as you can see, I don't even have any defense charms whatsoever in my inventory. I mean, that are not Ronin charms or legendaries, but just the standard epic defense charms, because for my play style, I don't really, the stats that they offer, um, I don't really find useful. I don't like damage reduction or injured resolve gain or any of that stuff. Don't really use it. I don't like getting used to that sort of defensive play style. So um, you could make a running charm is for is good for fun builds, fun runs and stuff. So this one I have fire damage and then the healing spirit and then fire master and healing spirit radius. So it's actually a little bit more useful. And also because there's not really anything else that I would like on the top slot. Damage reduction, it barely makes any difference. Injured resolve gain, I don't like getting comfortable getting hit for, resolve gain. Revive health, not really useful. Ghost offering health, also don't really find it useful. Healing instance radius, basically the same thing, but for the spirit. Duration is also, you know, you don't really stand around the instance too long. It feels like maybe that would be useful if you're defending a point during um, a boss wave that has toxic clouds as a modifier. But yeah, again, it's just situational. You don't really use that, so I don't like wasted slots. So that's why I don't like these stats. Now the second slot does give you a little bit more, you know, DPS based options. So it gives you the same from the top, and it gives you ultimate damage, fire damage, Oni damage, stagger damage, and then the Ronin specific ones, which are weakening burst radius, um, which again, if you're running weakening burst, then that could be useful, but that's not a great technique to run, in my opinion. And then healing incense radius, we already talked about this, and duration. So yeah, not a not a great, because it's meant to be a support class. but you can actually play it and it can do a lot of damage, the Ronin. So for for my own play style, all these options are not that great. Now, one thing that's cool about the Ronin is if we go back to the techniques, it's the only class that has, aside from the enhanced ghost weapons, it's the only class that has an additional 15% stagger damage, which is great because as you can see, I run stagger damage as well on my katana. And that's because I do Moonmaster cancel, so I want to be able to stagger enemies faster. Um, and you could actually the Ronin is the class that if you're wanting to do a bunch of stagger damage, you could actually really lean into it because you do have that technique that nobody else has. So you could put stagger damage on your katana, and then you can actually put it on the bomb pack as well. Where is it? There it is. You could have melee stagger damage as well on the bomb pack, and then you could have it on the charm, and you can have a little bit of melee damage on kunai. You could go for a full stagger build with Ronin, and then another additional 12% on caltrops if you were running that. So you could do a ton of stagger damage, and if you pair it up with Masamunes, which is the the um, the heavy kick, gives you an additional um, you know I don't know what the amount is, but after the last patch, they increase the stagger damage. No, not the stagger damage. Yeah, they did the stagger damage. That's what I'm trying to say. They increased the stagger damage for wind stands, so it has that much more because if it triggers the perk, it's another 20% chance to deal double damage, which also goes for stagger damage. So you could have tons and tons of stagger with the Ronin that you couldn't with any other class. So that's just a cool thing to know. Um, for ultimate, since you don't, like I said, you don't really do a lot of your ultimate doesn't really do a lot of damage. Not even the staggering breath, because this one is more to just clear and weaken. So it doesn't do a lot of damage per se in itself, as as much as it just applies the weaken so you can do more damage afterwards. So yeah, that's why I like to run double Oni damage because it's basically like a Enjo's, that you don't have to worry about getting hit because that's having that additional 20% Oni damage makes a big difference because it applies to every source of damage. So that's one of the cool things about Ronin that you can just because you're not too worried about your, equipping or having something with old damage. Um, you can actually lean into Oni damage and into ghost weapon damage as well, which is, as you can see, this is sort of my standard Ronin build. A bunch of ghost weapon damage. I'm running 110%, um, which is great. Now, if you look at what I have equipped, I have Fire Master on the charms, an additional 25%, and that synergizes with status effect damage, 18% on the bomb pack, and with the fired up on my caltrops. And so my caltrops basically melt enemies because they have 110 ghost weapon damage stacked, and then plus 25% from the fired up and Fire Master. And so it's really fun to play with this combination. Um, Now, if you're wanting to do, I guess this is where I could just recommend a few builds, also because I don't want to run too long with this video. But yeah, I will. I actually, yeah, I will do that. I'm gonna go and show you a few builds for different cases, and hopefully you guys will find this useful. Thanks a lot for watching, and catch you guys on the next one. GG's.